She was in mourning at her friend's wake, but freezes upon seeing her husband arrive with a baby. Emily Thompson felt the weight of grief tightening her chest as she accepted condolences in the funeral home parlor in Boston. Her best friend since adolescence had passed away after a long battle against an illness that slowly consumed her, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. It was then that she saw Michael, her husband, entering through the side door of the wake, carrying a baby of approximately 6 months in his arms. The child was wearing a black onesie that she had never seen before, and Michael had an expression that mixed despair and determination. The parlor fell into complete silence as all eyes turned to that inexplicable scene. Emily tried to approach, but Michael made a discreet gesture for her to wait. He walked directly to Mrs. Margaret, mother of Rachel, the deceased, and gently placed the child in the lap of the 70-year-old woman. The elderly woman's reaction was what disturbed Emily the most. She hugged the baby with a disconcerting familiarity, as if she had known him for a long time. "Finally you've come home, my little grandson," murmured Mrs. Margaret, gently rocking the little one. Emily felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Little grandson? What little grandson? Rachel had never mentioned having children, much less a baby. She watched Michael talking quietly with other relatives of the deceased, carefully avoiding her gaze. When she finally managed to pull him into the hallway, her hands were shaking with nervousness. "Michael, whose child is that? Where did you get that baby?" Emily whispered, trying to keep her voice controlled. "It's Rachel's son, Emily. She asked me to take care of him," Michael replied, but his eyes couldn't meet hers. "Rachel's son? What son? She never told me she was pregnant. We've been friends for 40 years, Michael. She told me everything." Emily raised her voice, but quickly controlled herself when she noticed some people starting to look. "I can't explain here. We'll talk at home," Michael murmured, returning to the parlor. Emily stood still in the hallway, feeling lost and betrayed. How was it possible that her best friend had a son without her knowing? During all the months of the illness, when Emily spent countless hours by Rachel's bedside in the hospital, at no point had she mentioned a child. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Back in the parlor, Emily watched people's reactions. Some of Rachel's relatives greeted the baby with nostalgic smiles. Others whispered among themselves with worried expressions. It was when Jessica, Rachel's cousin, approached her with an envelope in her hands. "Emily, Rachel left this for you and Michael," said Jessica, handing her a sealed letter. "She told me to give it only after everything." Emily took the letter with trembling hands. Her name and Michael's were written in Rachel's familiar handwriting. However, before she could open it, Jessica continued speaking, lowering her voice even further. "Did you know that Rachel had been going to a fertility clinic in recent months? Mrs. Margaret told me she was having treatments there. I thought it was strange considering her age and, well, her situation." Emily felt a chill down her spine. Fertility clinic? Rachel was 45 years old and sick. Why would she be getting fertility treatments? Nothing made sense. She put the letter in her purse, deciding to read it in private. She went to the funeral home's restroom, where she finally opened the envelope. The letter was long, written with the already shaky handwriting from Rachel's last months. "My dear Emily, if you are reading this letter, it means the moment I so feared has arrived. I know you must be confused and maybe even angry with me. I need to tell you a truth that I've kept all these years, and I hope you can forgive me. Do you remember when we did that fertility treatment together 10 years ago, when you were trying to have children and I offered moral support? Well, I was also undergoing treatment, but for a different reason. I was donating eggs for research, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Emily, the baby that Michael brought today, he is my son, but he is also yours. The eggs I used to conceive him were yours, which were frozen at the clinic. I convinced the doctors to release them by claiming we were family, technically lying about our degree of kinship. Michael knew. I reached out to him 3 months ago when I found out my time was running out. I begged him to agree to be the child's legal father. He signed the papers because he knew how much you always wanted to be a mother, and because I said it was your last chance to have the child you both wanted so much. I know this seems crazy, but when I found out about my condition, all I wanted was to make sure my baby had the best parents in the world, and those parents are you. His name is Nathan Michael Thompson Brooks. I registered him with your last name because I always knew he would be yours. Please don't hate Michael for keeping the secret. I made him swear not to say anything until this moment. He only wanted to protect you from the pain of another disappointment if something went wrong with the pregnancy. I love you and I love our Nathan. Forever your friend, Rachel. Emily read the letter 3 times before she could fully process what was written. Her eggs, her genetic material. The baby was biologically her son, but carried by her best friend. Tears began to stream down her face, a mixture of relief, anger, and a strange gratitude. She returned to the living room with the letter in her hands. Michael was talking with the Brooks family attorney, an elderly man named Attorney Wilson. Seeing her approach, Michael excused himself and came to meet her. "Did you read it?" he asked softly. "I did," Emily replied, still trying to organize her thoughts. "Michael, how could you agree to this without consulting me? How could you make such an important decision about our life without including me?" "Emily, you don't understand the situation. Rachel was desperate. She said that if I didn't agree, she would give the child up for adoption. At least this way, the baby would stay with us, with you, who always wanted so much to be a mother. But it was my choice too, my eggs, my life, my decision," Emily whispered intensely, trying not to draw attention. Before Michael could respond, a harsh voice interrupted the conversation. "Excuse me, are you the Thompson couple?" They turned to find a woman around 50 years old, dressed in black, with a severe expression on her face. "I'm Karen Brooks, Rachel's sister. We need to talk," said the woman, staring intently at Michael. "About Nathan's custody." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Karen was a woman that Rachel rarely mentioned, and when she did, it was always with some tension. They had grown apart years ago due to financial issues related to their parents' inheritance. "Custody?" Emily repeated, confused. "Yes, custody. Nathan is my nephew, and as Rachel's only living relative, I have rights to him," Karen said, crossing her arms. "Especially considering that this whole Panby arrangement was made behind the family's back." Attorney Wilson approached the group, sensing the tension in the air. "Mrs. Karen, as I explained on the phone, Rachel left very specific instructions about Nathan's custody. She legally named Michael and Emily Thompson as the child's guardians. Instructions that were made by a sick woman, and possibly under the influence of medication," Karen retorted. "Besides, I found out that this couple tried to adopt several times without success. Why were they rejected? What problems do they have that make them unfit to raise a child?" Emily Thompson felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. It was true that they had tried to adopt 3 times in the last 8 years, and each time the process didn't move forward for different reasons. First because of financial issues, then because of Emily's health problems, and lastly, because Michael lost his job. "That's none of your business," Michael said, trying to stay calm. "It is my business when it concerns my nephew's well-being," Karen replied, raising her voice. "Do you think I don't know you were rejected by the proper authorities? And now you want to keep Nathan through this shady scheme?" Other people at the wake began to pay attention to the argument. Mrs. Margaret, still holding Nathan in her arms, slowly approached the group. "Karen, my dear, this is not the time for this," the elderly woman said with a tired voice. "We are mourning Rachel. These matters can be resolved later." "No, Mother. This is exactly the right time. These people are taking advantage of Rachel's situation to keep the child, and you are helping them," Karen accused, pointing her finger at her own mother. "Karen, please," Emily intervened, trying to calm the situation. "I understand your concern, but Rachel was my best friend. She knew that we would love Nathan as our own son." "Friend?" Karen laughed sarcastically. "What kind of friend steals the other's eggs to have a baby? What kind of friend manipulates a sick woman to get what she wants?" "It wasn't like that," Emily exclaimed, finally losing her composure. "I didn't even know about any of this. I just found out through Rachel's letter. Of course you knew. You planned it all. First you convince Rachel to use her eggs, then you have her name you as guardians. Very convenient, don't you think?" Nathan started crying in Mrs. Margaret's arms, apparently disturbed by the raised voices. The elderly woman tried to calm him, but the crying only intensified. "Let me try," Emily said instinctively, reaching out her arms. To everyone's surprise, including Emily's, as soon as she took Nathan into her arms, the baby immediately calmed down. He looked at her with his big dark eyes and gave a little smile. "See," Mrs. Margaret said softly. "He recognizes his mother." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if Nathan really recognized her, as if there was an unexplainable connection between them. Perhaps it was the biological bond, or perhaps it was simply the instant love she felt for that helpless child. "That doesn't prove anything," Karen said, but her voice had lost some of its previous aggressiveness. "A child can calm down with anyone." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Attorney Wilson cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. "If I may, I would like to clarify a few things. I have here all the legal documents prepared by Rachel in the last few months. She was of sound mind when she signed them, as attested to by 3 different doctors." He opened a folder and began showing the papers. "Here we have Nathan's birth certificate, where Michael Thompson is listed as the father. Here Rachel's will naming the Thompson couple as the child's legal guardians. And here," he paused dramatically, "we have the inheritance donation." "What inheritance?" Karen asked, suddenly interested. "Rachel left all her assets to Nathan, including the apartment in the Back Bay neighborhood, the house in Cape Cod that she inherited from her parents, and a considerable amount in investments. The Thompson couple will be the administrators of this inheritance until Nathan turns 18. Emily widened her eyes. She knew Rachel had some money saved, but had no idea of the extent of her assets. Rachel had always lived simply, working as a retired teacher, but apparently had been very frugal with her savings. Karen, on the other hand, became visibly agitated by the information. "This is absurd. That inheritance should stay with the Brooks family. My mother and I are Rachel's only living relatives. Actually," Attorney Wilson continued, "Rachel left an amount for you, Mrs. Margaret, as a lifetime pension. For you, Karen, she left only the books from her personal library." "Books?" Karen practically shouted. "She leaves millions to strangers and gives me books." "Perhaps because you only showed up here when you needed money," Mrs. Margaret said sadly. "Rachel told me about your visits, always asking for loans you never paid back." Emily rocked Nathan gently, trying to absorb all this information. The situation was becoming more complex by the minute. It wasn't just about the custody of a child. There were matters of inheritance, family, and old resentments involved. "I will contest this in court," Karen threatened. "I'll prove that you manipulated my sick sister. No judge will allow strangers to keep an inheritance that should belong to the family." It was at this moment that a woman in a white lab coat entered the hall. It was Samantha, the nurse who cared for Rachel during her last months. Emily recognized her immediately from the many visits to the hospital. "Excuse me," Samantha said, addressing the group. "I heard you were discussing Mrs. Rachel's baby. I would like to say a few things that might clarify the situation." Everyone turned to her, eager for any additional information. "I cared for Rachel for 4 months. She talked a lot about Nathan and about you, Emily, and Michael. She was not confused or under the influence of medication when she made these decisions. On the contrary, she was very lucid and determined." Samantha took a small notebook from her bag. "Rachel asked me to write down some important things in case questions arose later. She knew the family might question her decisions. Everything is documented here with dates and times." "And what exactly is written there?" Karen asked suspiciously. "For example, on March 15th, Rachel told me verbatim, 'Samantha, Karen showed up here yesterday asking to borrow money again. She didn't even ask how I was feeling. She only talked about her bills and how difficult it would be to care for me if I got worse. I cannot leave Nathan in the hands of someone who sees him only as a burden or a source of income." The silence that followed was awkward. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but Samantha continued. "On March 22nd, she said, 'Emily was here again today. She brought those yellow flowers I always like. Remember from the time when we were young. She holds my hand when I'm in pain and tells me stories about when we were children. She will love Nathan the way I always dreamed of being loved by a mother." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. It was true that she visited Rachel almost daily, but she thought she was just being a good friend. She didn't imagine her simple gestures had touched Rachel's heart so much. "And there's more," Samantha continued, flipping through the notebook. "On April 3rd, Rachel received a phone call. After hanging up, she told me, 'It was Karen. She wants me to change my will to leave everything to her and her mother. She said a baby doesn't need that much money, as if Nathan weren't part of her family too.'" Mrs. Margaret let out a deep sigh and looked at her daughter with disappointment. "Karen, is this true? Did you call your sick sister asking her to change the will?" Karen turned red but tried to defend herself. "I was just being practical. A child doesn't need that much money anyway. And these two," she pointed to Emily and Michael, "don't even really know Nathan. At least I'm blood family." "Blood family that never cared about Rachel when she was alive," Margaret scolded. Nathan began to get restless on Emily's lap. She looked around and noticed there were bottles and diapers in a bag Michael had brought. It was clear he had prepared to care for the baby, which meant this situation had been planned for some time. "Michael, how long have you been taking care of Nathan?" Emily asked. 3 weeks, Michael answered quietly. "Since Rachel was last hospitalized. She didn't want to leave him with strangers, and Margaret isn't physically able to care for a baby." 3 weeks? Emily repeated, incredulous. "You've been taking care of a baby for 3 weeks and didn't tell me." "Emily, I wanted to tell you, but Rachel made me promise. She said she wanted you to meet Nathan at the right time when it could be just joy, without the pain of seeing her go." Emily looked at Nathan, who was now sleeping peacefully in her arms. 3 weeks. Michael had been waking up in the middle of the night, changing diapers, preparing bottles, all while she thought he was just working more or visiting friends. "Where was he staying?" she asked. "At Rachel's house. She prepared a complete room for him before she got too sick. She said she wanted him to have a real home from day one." Samantha intervened again. "I can confirm that. Rachel spent a lot of money preparing everything for Nathan. She bought a crib, a stroller, clothes, toys, all of the best quality. And you know what else she bought?" Everyone fell silent, waiting for the answer. "A photo album. She collected photos of you two, Emily and Michael, from your teens until now, photos of the 3 of you together, from trips, from celebrations. She made an album for Nathan, telling your story, the story of the parents she chose for him." Emily felt her heart break. Rachel had thought of every detail, every aspect of Nathan's life. She didn't just want to give her son a family. She wanted to give him a legacy, a history, roots. "Where is this album?" Emily asked, her voice choked. "It's at Rachel's house, along with a letter she wrote for Nathan to read when he grows up," Samantha answered. "What letter?" Margaret asked. "A letter explaining why she chose Emily and Michael as his parents. She talks about your friendship, about your character, about how you always wanted to have children but never could. She explains that Nathan was her way of giving you what she most wanted to give, a family." The silence in the room was almost palpable. Even Karen had stopped protesting, apparently processing the depth of her sister's planning. It was then that Nathan opened his eyes and looked directly at Emily. She noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small birthmark on the baby's neck, right in the same place where she herself had a similar mark. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the mark on Nathan's neck and then showing her own. "It's identical." Samantha smiled. Rachel was fascinated by that when Nathan was born. She said it was a sign, a confirmation that she had made the right decision. "It's as if the universe is saying that Nathan truly belongs to Emily," those were her words. Emily looked at Michael, and for the first time since the situation began, she saw the man she had loved for 20 years, not the man who had made an important decision without consulting her. You could see the care in his eyes, the love he already felt for Nathan, the pain he had carried alone for weeks. "Why didn't you tell me about the birthmark?" she asked softly. "Because I wanted you to discover it naturally, like what just happened. Rachel said it would be more special that way." Attorney Wilson cleared his throat discreetly. "If I may, there are still a few more pieces of information that need to be shared. Rachel recorded some videos at the hospital, specifically intended to clarify her decisions in case there were any challenges. Videos? Karen asked, her attention renewed. Yes. She knew the family might question her decisions, so she recorded testimonies explaining her state of mind, her motivations, and her specific instructions regarding Nathan. He took a tablet from his briefcase and prepared to play the videos. This first one was recorded 6 weeks ago when Rachel was still at home. The screen showed Rachel sitting in her family room with Nathan in her lap. She was visibly thinner and paler, but her eyes shone with determination. "My name is Rachel Maria Brooks. Today is July 20th, and I am recording this video in full possession of my mental faculties, as you can verify. I want to formally record my decisions regarding my son Nathan and my assets. Nathan is my biological son, conceived through in vitro fertilization using eggs from Emily Thompson, my best friend for 40 years. Emily did not know her eggs were being used. I obtained authorization from the clinic by claiming a degree of kinship that did not exist. I know this may seem wrong, but my motivation was pure, to give Emily and Michael the child they always wanted, and to give my son the best parents I could choose. Michael agreed to be Nathan's legal father because he knows my character and knows I would never do anything to harm people I love. He kept the secret to protect Emily from another disappointment if something went wrong with the pregnancy. I leave my entire inheritance to Nathan because I want to ensure he has the best opportunities in life. Emily and Michael will manage these assets with the love and responsibility they have always shown in their own lives. To my family, especially Karen, I want to say that I did not make these decisions out of anger or resentment. I made them because I know people's hearts. Emily and Michael will give Nathan unconditional love, solid values, and an upbringing based on affection and respect. This is my final wish, and I hope it will be respected." The video ended, and again silence filled the room. Rachel had been clear, direct, and evidently lucid in her explanations. "There are 2 more videos," Attorney Wilson said, "one recorded at the hospital 3 weeks ago, and another recorded 1 week ago, just a few days before the end." Karen was visibly shaken. Her sister's clarity and determination in the videos made it impossible to argue that she was confused or manipulated. "You don't need to show the others," she said quietly. I understand." Mrs. Margaret approached her daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Karen, your sister loved you, but she also knew her priorities. Rachel wanted to make sure Nathan grew up in a home where he was the #1 priority, not a source of income or a burden." Karen nodded slowly, seemingly processing everything that had happened. "Will you let me visit him?" she asked Emily and Michael. Emily looked at Michael, who nodded affirmatively. "Of course, Karen. Nathan needs to know his family. Mrs. Margaret will also always be welcome. Rachel didn't want to divide the family. She wanted to give Nathan the biggest family possible." Samantha smiled and turned to Emily. "May I make a suggestion?" Rachel left very specific instructions about Nathan's care. Feeding schedules, the brand of formula he likes, songs that calm him down. She prepared everything thinking about making the transition easier for you. "What kind of songs?" Emily asked, curious. "Those same songs that you 3 used to sing when you were young. Rachel told me you had a repertoire of songs you sang together." "Nathan loves those songs." Emily laughed through her tears. It was true. She, Rachel, and other friends had an informal group that would get together to sing. Rachel had preserved even those memories for Nathan. "There's one more thing," Samantha said, hesitating a little. "Rachel asked me to give this to you when the right time came." She took from her bag a delicate necklace with a pendant in the shape of a heart broken in half. This necklace belonged to Rachel's mother. She broke it in half. One half stayed with her, and she was buried with it. The other half is for Emily to wear, symbolizing that the 2 of you will always be connected through Nathan. Emily took the necklace with trembling hands. She immediately recognized the piece. She had seen Rachel wear it a few times when they were younger. She said that when Nathan grows up, you can tell him about this necklace, and he will understand that he has 2 mothers who love him, one who is caring for him on earth and another who is caring for him from heaven. At that moment, Nathan woke up and started to cry. Emily instinctively began to rock him, but the crying persisted. "He must be hungry," Michael said, picking up the bag with the baby supplies. Rachel said he has very regular schedules. Emily sat in a nearby chair and prepared the bottle with Michael's help. While feeding Nathan, she felt everyone's eyes on her, but for the first time she didn't feel uncomfortable. It was as if she was doing something natural, something she had always known how to do. "He trusts you," Margaret observed. "See how he calms down in your arms." "It's because she is his biological mother," Samantha explained. "There is a connection that goes beyond what we can explain scientifically." Nathan finished feeding and made that sleepy expression typical of satisfied babies. Emily put him over her shoulder to help him burp, a gesture she did automatically, as if she had done it thousands of times before. "Have you thought about a middle name for him?" Attorney Wilson asked. "On the record, he is Nathan Michael Thompson Brooks, but Rachel left a suggestion." "What suggestion?" Michael asked. "Nathan Michael Rachel Thompson Brooks." She wanted her name to be present in his identity. Emily looked at Michael, who nodded immediately. "Perfect," Emily said. "Nathan Michael Rachel Thompson Brooks. He will carry the name of everyone who loves him." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. The following hours passed in a blur of condolences, paperwork, and preparations for the burial. Emily didn't let go of Nathan for a single moment, and he seemed perfectly comfortable in her arms. Michael took on the practical tasks, talking with the funeral home, organizing the flowers, coordinating with the priest. During the burial, Emily held Nathan while Michael held her free hand. Margaret was beside them, and even Karen positioned herself nearby, creating a family circle around Rachel's small coffin. The priest, Father Patrick, who had known Rachel for many years, gave a touching speech about love, sacrifice, and legacies that transcend physical life. Rachel leaves us not only with memories, but with a new life to love. She planted a seed of hope that will flourish through Nathan, and the love he will receive from his new family. After the burial, everyone gathered at Rachel's house. It was the first time Emily had entered the place since Rachel had prepared the room for Nathan. What she saw left her speechless. The room was decorated with soft colors, quality furniture, and personal details that showed Rachel's meticulous care. There were photos of Emily and Michael on the walls, along with pictures of Rachel during the pregnancy. A bookshelf of children's books took up an entire wall, and a musical mobile hung over the crib. "She spent months preparing this," Michael explained. "Every detail was thought out for the two of you. Look here." He showed a rocking chair positioned near the window. "She said it was for you to sit here on Sunday afternoons to read stories to Nathan. And look at this." Michael opened a dresser drawer that was full of tiny clothes organized by size and season. She calculated Nathan's growth up to 2 years old and bought clothes for each stage. Emily sat in the rocking chair with Nathan in her lap and looked out the window. The view overlooked a small garden where Rachel grew yellow flowers, the same ones Emily always brought to her in the hospital. "Michael, how are we going to do this?" Emily asked. "How are we going to become parents overnight?" "The same way all parents do," he replied, sitting on the arm of the chair. "One day at a time with lots of love and patience." Samantha appeared in the doorway carrying a box. "Emily, here are Nathan's medical records, including the vaccination schedule and pediatric appointments that are already scheduled. Rachel organized everything 6 months in advance." 6 months? Emily repeated. She knew her time was limited, so she wanted to make sure Nathan had continuity in his medical care. "The pediatrician already knows the whole situation and is expecting you next week." Emily leafed through the papers. There was a detailed feeding schedule, expected development, important milestones to watch for. Rachel had turned motherhood into a meticulous project. "And there's one more thing," Samantha said, taking a small digital recorder out of the box. Rachel recorded lullabies. She said that when Nathan missed her, you could play the recordings. Emily picked up the recorder carefully, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "Can I hear one?" she asked. Samantha nodded and pressed play. Rachel's familiar voice filled the room, softly singing an old American lullaby that they used to sing when they were young. Nathan immediately turned his head toward the sound, his eyes shining with recognition. Emily began to cry, but not from sadness. It was a cry of relief, of gratitude, of overflowing love. Rachel had found a way to be present, even after she was gone. She recorded 15 different songs, Samantha explained, one for each day of Nathan's first 2 weeks with you. Michael put his hand on Emily's shoulder. She thought of everything, didn't she? At that moment, Margaret entered the room accompanied by Karen. "Dear ones, I've come to bring one last thing from Rachel," Margaret said, carrying a thick envelope. "What is it now?" Emily asked, joking. "They're photos," Karen answered, her voice softer than it had been all day. "Photos from Rachel's pregnancy. She made a point of documenting every month, every ultrasound, every important moment." Emily opened the envelope and found dozens of photos. Rachel pregnant, smiling, always with her hand on her belly. In some photos she held ultrasound images. In others she was organizing the baby's room. "Look at this one," Karen said, pointing to a specific photo. In the image, Rachel was sitting in the same rocking chair where Emily was now, holding a photo of Emily and Michael. She looked at the camera with a radiant smile. "She said she was imagining what it would be like when you two were in this chair with Nathan," Karen explained. Emily looked around the room, absorbing every detail, every thoughtful touch, every gesture of love that Rachel had put into that space. "Are we going to live here?" she asked Michael. "If you want. The house belongs to Nathan now, technically ours until he grows up, or we can rent our house out and use the income for his future." Emily gently rocked Nathan, thinking about the possibilities. Rachel's house was bigger than theirs. It had a garden where Nathan could play, and it was full of positive memories. "I think we should stay here," she said, "at least for the first few years. Nathan should grow up in the environment his biological mother prepared for him." "Biological mother," Margaret repeated softly. "Emily, dear, you are his biological mother. The eggs were yours. Rachel was the gestational mother." Emily was still getting used to that reality. Genetically, Nathan was her son. Emotionally, he was becoming her son with every passing minute. Legally, he would be her son as soon as all the paperwork was finalized. "It's confusing, isn't it?" Karen said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "But you know what isn't confusing? The love that Rachel felt for you two, and the love you already feel for Nathan." Emily looked at Karen, surprised by the change in attitude. "Karen, about earlier, I understand your concern. It really does all seem very strange from the outside." "No, Emily, I was being selfish. The truth is I was angry about the inheritance, not about the custody of Nathan. I don't have the means or the experience to take care of a baby. And after seeing Rachel's videos, after hearing all the explanations, I understood that she made the right decisions." Margaret smiled at her daughter. "I'm proud of you, Karen. Recognizing your own mistakes shows maturity. Besides," Karen continued, "I saw how Nathan reacted to you. He really seems to recognize you as his parents, and that's not something you can force or make up." Samantha, who had been silently observing the family, finally spoke. "If I may offer a professional observation, I've cared for many families in difficult situations. What I see here is something rare. Unconditional love. Emily, you didn't hesitate for a second to pick Nathan up when he cried. Michael, you've been taking care of him for weeks without complaining or feeling overwhelmed. That's no coincidence." Nathan started to get restless, and Emily instinctively began to hum the same song she had heard Rachel sing on the recording. To everyone's surprise, Nathan immediately calmed down and closed his eyes. "How did you know that song?" Samantha asked, impressed. "It's one of the songs the three of us used to sing when we were young," Emily explained. "Rachel, me, and some other friends. We had an informal singing group." "Genetic memory," Attorney Wilson said, entering the room. "There are studies that suggest certain preferences can be passed down genetically. Nathan might have a predisposition to like the same music as you. Or maybe it's just love," Margaret said simply. Michael stood up and went to the window. "Everyone, it's getting dark. I think we should let Emily and Nathan get some rest. It's been a very intense day for all of us." "Actually," Emily said, "I'd like you all to stay a bit longer. I want Nathan to get used to his whole family. Margaret, would you like to hold him for a little while?" The elderly woman smiled and held out her arms. Nathan was gently transferred and continued to sleep peacefully. "He looks just like Rachel when she was a baby," Margaret said. "The same face shape, the same lips, but the eyes are yours, Emily. And look at his little hands, just like Michael's." It was fascinating how Nathan seemed to carry characteristics of all of them, as if love had shaped his appearance beyond genetics. "Karen," Michael said, "would you like to hold him too?" Karen hesitated for a moment, but then she approached. When she took Nathan in her arms, she studied him carefully. "Hi, Nathan," she whispered. "I'm your Aunt Karen. I know I didn't get off to a very good start, but I promise I will try to be a better aunt from now on." Nathan opened his eyes briefly, looked at Karen and then closed them again, apparently approving of the new member of his family. "Do you know what else Rachel left?" Samantha said, taking one last envelope from the box. "Letters for Nathan to read on specific dates, on his first birthday when he starts to walk, on his first day of school, at graduation, at his wedding. She wrote letters to accompany him throughout his life." Emily felt a lump in her throat. Even though she wasn't physically present, Rachel had found a way to be part of the most important moments of Nathan's life. "And there's a special letter," Samantha continued, "to be opened only if Nathan ever questions why he was raised by adoptive parents instead of his biological mother." "But he wasn't adopted," Michael said, confused. "Emily is the biological mother." "I know, but Rachel anticipated that Nathan might get confused when he grows up. The letter explains the whole situation in a way a child can understand, that he had two mothers who loved him so much that they came together to give him the best life possible." Emily took the envelope with the letters, feeling the weight of the responsibilities they were taking on. It wasn't just about raising Nathan. It was about honoring Rachel's legacy, preserving her memory, and ensuring that Nathan grew up knowing the full story of his birth. "Michael, I think we should start a journal," Emily said. "A record of Nathan's life to complement everything Rachel left." "Great idea. We can write to him about every milestone, every special moment, every discovery." Attorney Wilson cleared his throat discreetly. "There's just one more legal formality. I need your signatures on some documents to finalize the transfer of custody and the administration of the inheritance." They spent the next few minutes signing papers, legally formalizing what was already happening emotionally. Emily and Michael were becoming Nathan's parents. "All done," Attorney Wilson said finally. "Nathan Michael Rachel Thompson Brooks is officially in your custody, and you are now the legal administrators of an inheritance that, if well managed, will secure his future into adulthood." Emily looked at Michael, and for the first time in many hours they smiled. "We're parents," Michael said simply. "We're parents," Emily repeated, still absorbing the reality. Nathan, as if he understood the importance of the moment, opened his eyes and looked directly at Emily. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled. It wasn't a baby's reflex smile. It was a genuine smile, directed specifically at her. "He understood," Margaret said with tears in her eyes. "He knows he's home." Samantha began to gather her belongings, preparing to leave. "Emily, Michael, you have my number. Any questions about Nathan's care, anything you need clarified about Rachel's instructions, don't hesitate to call." "Thank you, Samantha," Emily said, "for everything, for taking care of Rachel, for helping with Nathan, for being here today." "It was a privilege," Samantha replied. "We rarely see so much love in such a difficult situation. You are going to be wonderful parents." After Samantha left, Margaret and Karen also prepared to leave. "Shall we come back tomorrow?" Margaret asked. "Of course," Emily replied. "Nathan needs to get to know his grandmothers better, and we need all the help we can get in these first days." Karen approached Emily. "Emily, I want to apologize again for the way I acted, for the things I said. I was afraid of losing the last connection I had with my sister. But now I understand that Nathan is that connection, and you will preserve Rachel's memory in a way I never could. Karen, we were all dealing with intense emotions. The important thing is that from now on we are a united family for Nathan." After everyone had left, Emily and Michael were finally alone with Nathan in Rachel's house. The reality of the situation began to settle in. They were responsible for a new life, and that life had come to them through an act of unconditional love from their best friend. "Michael, we need to talk about a few things," Emily said, placing Nathan in his crib. "I know," Michael replied, sitting in the armchair next to the crib. "You must be angry with me for keeping the secret." "I was angry," Emily admitted, "but now I understand why you did it, and I understand why Rachel asked you to keep it a secret. Emily, I wanted to tell you from the very first day. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, taking care of Nathan alone, without being able to share this joy with you." Emily moved closer to Michael and held his hands. "Then tell me now. Tell me about those 3 weeks. What was it like taking care of him? How did you feel?" Michael smiled, relaxing for the first time that day. "Emily, it was incredible and terrifying at the same time. On the first day, it took me 2 hours to change a diaper because I was afraid of hurting him. On the second day, he cried for 3 hours straight, and I didn't know what to do. I called Samantha crying, thinking I was doing everything wrong. And then? Then it started to feel natural. He taught me what he needed through his little cries, his smiles, his movements. And you know what the most special moment was? What? One morning, he woke up, and when he saw me, he gave me the biggest smile. It was as if he was saying, 'Hi, Daddy.' In that moment, I knew I was no longer just Michael taking care of Rachel's son. I was Nathan's daddy." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears again. "Michael, you are already an amazing father, and I haven't even started yet." "Emily, you have been his mother since he was conceived. The eggs were yours, the genetic material is yours. You just didn't know it yet." They were silent for a few minutes, watching Nathan sleep. It was surreal how their lives had completely changed in a single day. "What are we going to do tomorrow?" Emily asked. "We are going to start our life as a family," Michael replied. "We are going to learn Nathan's routine, learn his schedule, discover his preferences, and we are going to honor everything that Rachel prepared for him. What about work? What about our homes? What about everything?" "One thing at a time," Michael said, putting his arm around Emily. "Tomorrow we'll talk about the practical aspects. Today was about love, about family, about understanding that we have been blessed with a miracle." Nathan made a small sound in his sleep, and they both immediately turned to him. "He's perfect," Emily whispered. "He's ours," Michael replied. Emily stood up and went to the crib, watching Nathan sleep. His little fists were closed, and he breathed with the absolute tranquility of someone who feels completely safe. "Rachel," Emily whispered, "thank you. Thank you for giving us the most precious gift we could ever receive. I promise that we will love Nathan with all our hearts, that we will raise him with the values you admired in us, and that he will always know how loved he is." As if he had heard, Nathan smiled in his sleep, and Emily felt sure that Rachel, wherever she was also smiling. Michael joined Emily by the crib. "Welcome to the family, Nathan, Michael, Rachel, Thompson, Brooks," he said softly. "You have 3 parents who love you, Mommy Emily, Daddy Michael, and Mommy Rachel, who is watching over you from heaven." That night, Emily and Michael barely slept, not from worry or anxiety, but because they wanted to cherish every moment of that first day as parents. They took turns watching Nathan sleep, whispering plans for the future, sharing feelings they had kept inside for years. "Michael," Emily said during one of her turns to watch Nathan, "I have never felt so complete. It's as if a part of me that was missing has finally been found." "I feel the same way," Michael replied. "And you know what else? I feel like Rachel is still here somehow. In every detail she prepared, in every bit of care she took, in every decision she made, thinking of Nathan's well-being." The next morning, they were awakened by Nathan's crying. Emily got up automatically, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and went to the crib. "Good morning, my love," she said, picking him up. "How did you sleep?" Nathan stopped crying immediately and watched her with his curious dark eyes. "I think he's hungry," Michael said, already preparing the bottle following the instructions left by Rachel. While Emily fed Nathan, Michael prepared breakfast for them. It was an ordinary Saturday morning, but for them it was the beginning of a new life. "Emily, last night I was thinking," Michael said, pouring coffee. "I think we should visit Rachel's grave regularly with Nathan, so he grows up knowing his story, knowing where he came from." "I agree," Emily said, "and I think we should create traditions in her memory. Maybe on Nathan's birthday, we always bring yellow flowers to her." "And we can play her song recordings for Nathan every night," Michael suggested. Nathan finished his bottle, and Emily put him over her shoulder to burp. It was incredible how gestures she had never practiced before seemed so natural. "Michael, I'm scared," Emily admitted. "Scared of what? Of not being a good mother, of not knowing how to take care of him properly, of disappointing Rachel." Michael sat down next to Emily and held her free hand. "Emily, you are already a great mother. I saw how you instinctively reacted yesterday when Nathan cried. I saw how he calmed down in your arms. I saw how you absorbed all the information about his care. You were born to be Nathan's mother." "And you were born to be his father," Emily replied. 3 weeks taking care of him alone, and he was perfectly healthy and happy when he arrived yesterday." The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. It was Mrs. Margaret arriving as promised, carrying a bag of groceries. "Good morning, family," she said with a radiant smile. "How was the first night?" "Perfect," Emily replied, and she truly meant it. Mrs. Margaret took charge of the kitchen, preparing a hearty breakfast while Emily and Michael familiarized themselves with Nathan's routine. It was comforting to have the grandmother's presence, someone with experience caring for babies, and who knew intimately Rachel's wishes for Nathan. "Rachel left instructions about feeding too," Mrs. Margaret explained, organizing the supplies. She wanted Nathan to try homemade foods when the time came, not just store-bought products. "Mrs. Margaret," Emily said, "would you like to move in here? This house is big, it has empty rooms, and it would be wonderful to have your help in the first few months." The elderly woman stopped what she was doing and looked at Emily with surprise. "You want me living here?" "We do," Michael confirmed. "Nathan needs to know his roots, and you are his connection to Rachel's family. Besides, it would be a great help for us as first-time parents." Mrs. Margaret wiped her tears with her apron. "It would be an honor," she said. "This way I can take care of my little grandson and help you all at the same time." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Karen, bringing some boxes. "Good morning," she said, coming in with a much lighter attitude than the day before. "I brought some things from Rachel's house that might be useful for Nathan." "What things?" Emily asked. "Educational toys, children's books she was collecting, and—" "This here," Karen said, pulling a blue teddy bear from a box. "This teddy bear was with Rachel since she was a baby. Then it was with me, and she wanted it to be with Nathan too. It's a tradition in the Brooks family." Nathan, who was in Emily's arms, immediately reached out his little hands for the teddy bear when Karen brought it closer. "Look at that," Margaret said, laughing. "He recognized the family teddy bear." "How could he recognize something he's never seen?" Michael asked. "Maybe Rachel showed it to him when she was still pregnant," Karen suggested. "Or maybe it's just intuition. Babies are more perceptive than we think." Nathan grabbed the teddy bear and immediately brought it close to his face, smelling it and exploring its texture. "It looks like he approves," Emily said, smiling. The rest of the morning passed quickly, with everyone taking turns caring for Nathan and organizing the new household routine. Margaret chose the guest room to settle into, and Karen decided she would visit regularly on weekends to help with whatever was needed. "You know what I think we should do this afternoon?" Emily suggested. "Visit Rachel's grave. Take Nathan to see where his birth mother is resting." "Great idea," Michael agreed, "and we can bring yellow flowers." "And we can bring the recorder with Rachel's songs," Margaret suggested, "to play a song for her." When they arrived at the cemetery, Nathan was awake and alert in the stroller that Rachel had bought. He watched everything around him with curiosity, as if he sensed it was an important place. At Rachel's grave, Emily knelt with Nathan in her arms. "Rachel, I brought our son to meet you," Emily said softly. "He is beautiful, healthy, and very loved. Thank you for giving us this chance to be parents." Michael placed the yellow flowers in the vase, and Margaret turned on the recorder. Rachel's voice singing a lullaby filled the air, and Nathan immediately calmed down, as if recognizing the voice that had lulled him for 9 months. He remembers her, Karen observed with tears in her eyes. Of course he remembers, Margaret said. Love doesn't die, it just changes. When they returned home, they found Samantha waiting at the door with another box. I hope you don't mind another surprise, she said. I found this at the hospital, among Rachel's personal belongings. The box contained a detailed project that Rachel had created, a development plan for Nathan from birth to 5 years old. There were suggestions for activities, developmental milestones to watch for, and even ideas for birthday celebrations. She really thought of everything, Michael said, flipping through the papers. And look at this, Samantha said, pulling out a small notebook. These are notes she made about Nathan during the pregnancy, conversations she had with him, plans she made, feelings she experienced. Emily read a few pages aloud. 20th week. Nathan kicked a lot today. I think he's going to be an active boy. I hope Michael has the patience to play soccer with him when he grows up. 25th week. I played classical music for Nathan today. He moved around a lot during a Bach symphony. Emily always liked classical music. I wonder if he inherited that taste from her. 30th week. I talked to Nathan about Emily and Michael today. I told him how they met, how they fell in love, how they always wanted to have children. He seemed to understand everything. She talked to him about you all throughout the pregnancy, Samantha explained. Nathan grew up hearing stories about his parents even before he was born. At that moment, Nathan started to babble, making his first communicative sounds of the day. Everyone turned to him and he smiled, as if he were trying to join the conversation about his origin. He wants to tell his version of the story, Emily joked, tickling Nathan's belly. The baby laughed, a pure musical sound that filled the house with joy. That's the sound that was missing in this house, Margaret said, a child's laughter. Samantha stayed for dinner, sharing more memories about Rachel's last months. She told how Rachel constantly talked about Nathan, about her plans for him, about her certainty that she had made the right decisions. There was one day, Samantha narrated, when Rachel was particularly weak, and I asked her if she had any regrets about her choices. Do you know what she answered? Everyone fell silent, waiting. She said, Samantha, my only regret is not doing this sooner. Nathan could have had more time with Emily and Michael if I had been braver earlier. Emily felt a tightening in her heart. Even in her final moments, Rachel was thinking of Nathan's well-being and Emily and Michael's dream of becoming parents. She also said something else, Samantha continued. She said that if she could choose to live, or to guarantee that Nathan had the best parents in the world, she would choose Nathan without hesitation. For her, motherhood wasn't about being physically present, but about giving her child the best conditions for a happy life. Michael discreetly wiped away tears. How can someone be so selfless? He asked. True love is selfless, Margaret replied simply. After Samantha left, the new family established their first nighttime routine together. Margaret helped give Nathan a bath. Karen organized the little clothes for the next day. Michael prepared the bottles for the night, and Emily chose the lullaby she would play before Nathan went to sleep. When they finally put Nathan in his crib, he didn't want to sleep right away. He lay there looking at everyone, as if he wanted to memorize the faces of his new family. He's committing it to memory, Emily observed. First official day as our family. Nathan, Michael said softly, you are the most loved baby in the world. You have a mother who carried you in her heart long before you were born, a mother who carried you in her womb and gave you life, grandparents who adore you, and an aunt who is going to spoil you rotten. Nathan gave a sleepy little smile and finally closed his eyes. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story. Do you believe Rachel made the right decision by planning this family for Nathan? What touched you the most in this narrative about unconditional love and maternal sacrifice? Leave your opinions in the comments. It really helps us create stories that truly move you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will touch your heart.